All right, folks. So the last part of this chapter is part of this last section is really not my forte. That's the recommended daily allowances of different nutrients. I don't really pay much attention in my life to these things, but it is in the chapter. So anyway, they moved from the food pyramid. You remember how they had the food pyramid, and you were supposed to have a lot of fruits and vegetables and grains and stuff on the bottom, and up here on top we're supposed to keep your meat and your fats low. Remember that? Well, they moved away from the food pyramid, and now they have a My Plate. The government came out with My Plate, and it's just a plate, and they show you that like a pie chart almost, where they say, you know what, this much protein and three-quarters of your plate is grains, fruits, and vegetables, and then you have your dairy over here. So they want you to limit your simple sugars. They want you to have complex sugars. Grains are complex sugars, have complex sugars. Of course, vegetables have complex sugars. So they want you to limit your processed simple sugars, and they want you to limit your fats. So limit your fats and limit your simple sugars. There's this whole thing about sugars called the glycemic index. I have done a little bit of work on this academically in the past. It's how fast you absorb that food. For example, if you were to eat, a sugar cube, it would have it would be absorbed very quickly versus if you were to eat a piece of spaghetti, because that's complex carbohydrates and has to be broken down. So a lot of times we can look at the glycemic index of a sugar and see what's better for you. Of course, the faster it's absorbed, the more stress it puts on your beta cells of the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas, because your blood sugar skyrockets. But if it takes time to absorb, and it's absorbed steadily and more slowly, then you have a steady release of insulin to handle the slow increase of your blood glucose. So that's the whole thing with the sugars. So this is the My Plate. You do not have to memorize any recommended daily allowances of anything. You do not. All right. This is the different food groups, and basically shown in My Plate. You fruits, grains, vegetables, and proteins. That's the food group. All right. By the way, biologically, let me go back and show you something. Biologically, a lot of these things that we call vegetables are actually fruits. They are biological fruits. Anything with a seed encased in it is a fruit. So a cucumber is a fruit. A tomato is a fruit. So not just the things you think of as fruits. I mean, you think of an apple and an orange and a banana as a fruit, and they are. But just as they are fruits, biologically speaking, a pumpkin is a fruit, a cucumber is a fruit, a whatever else I just mentioned, anything with the seeds in it is really a fruit. All right, so these are the food groups right here, and they tell you what they provide. And please, please, please don't memorize this stuff right here. It's something that I would have to look up if I wanted to know, and I don't expect you to memorize it. All right, now we have bulk and trace minerals. Sometimes we call these macro and micronutrients, and they don't have anything to do with size of the nutrient. It's not like macronutrients are big and micronutrients are small. It's just that we need a lot of the macronutrients and we don't need very many micronutrients. And then if you're in the nutrition field, we call these macronutrients bulk nutrients, and we call the micronutrients trace nutrients. Oh, by the way, yeah, one of you is a nutritionist. So, yeah, you're probably cringing at my butchering of this topic. Sorry. I forgot that one of you has a advanced degree in nutrition. Well, I'm doing my best here. It's not really my field. Anyway, for the bulk minerals, I always tell my students back in Bio 203 to remember schnapps, and that's carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, phosphorus, and sulfur. And you can see the phosphorus here, and you can see that's the only one, isn't it? Yeah. But we have some other things we need quite a bit of. We need a lot of table salt, sodium and chloride. But I say we need a lot, but be careful here because of this. Your body is great at conserving sodium, and it's horrible at conserving potassium. So you really need to eat your one banana a day. You really need that because you don't conserve potassium well. But the American diet gets actually too much sodium. So unless you're doing some really major exercises where you're sweating a lot, you probably don't have to worry about sodium. All right. Now, if you're out there, you know, if you're playing football, you're splitting wood, and you sweat all day long, yeah, you're probably going to need some sodium in your diet because you just lost all that sodium from sweating. So these are bulk minerals you can see here. And you can see what they do. Magnesium is a cofactor for lots of enzymes. It's actually a big cofactor for the kinases we've been talking about. Remember how a hormone binds its receptor and turns on the adenylate cyclase and you make cyclic AMP, and then the cyclic AMP turns on kinases? Well, these kinases need magnesium, so they're very important. Calcium is needed for heartbeat, not heart rate, but heartbeat, normal neuronal and muscular function. The heart is a muscle. So we need calcium for normal muscle and nerve function. Sodium and chloride are two of the major extracellular electrolytes. These are electrolytes. And sodium and chloride are the major extracellular electrolytes. They're needed for proper nervous function. Potassium is a major intracellular electrolyte. And of course, as you know, these electrolytes are needed for normal membrane cellular function. You know, the membrane polarization and depolarization and excitability. These electrolytes are needed for that, so they're very important. Now, we do need some other things. Trace minerals. We don't need many of them, but we do need them. For example, copper's found in the electron transport chain. I was about to say something wrong, but copper's found in the electron transport chain. One of the cytochromes, I forget which one, maybe A3, has copper in it. Cobalt's part of vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is not active unless it has cobalt. Selenium is found in, selenium is an antioxidant. It actually is found in some, I can see that right here. It's found in some enzymes. And be darned if I can't remember the enzymes right now, I can't. Chromium is found in this thing called glucose tolerance factor. That's where chromium is found. So diabetes is not just a simple insulin story. We always teach it like it's a simple insulin story, but there's subtleties and nuances to diabetes. And one of them is this protein in our body called the glucose tolerance factor. Chromium is a big part of that. All right. Now, zinc, I skipped it because I just want to talk about this last enzyme because it's coming up next in the next chapter. Zinc is a big enzyme, is a big cofactor for the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. The next chapter, we're going to be doing a lot of this right here. That is catalyzed by carbonic anhydrase. Carbonic anhydrase catalyzes that. You need zinc for that catalysis. So, of course, this is a very important reaction. By the way, I'll keep going with you. So you realize that it's an acid, so it deprotonates. That's a 3. That's a 3 down here. You probably can't. There you go. So we need zinc for that carbonic anhydrase. And, of course, you know you need iron for carrying oxygen, hemoglobin. All right. That's your bulk minerals and your trace minerals. Okay, you have two different flavors of vitamins, and I don't mean like sweet flavor, sour flavor. I mean two different types of vitamins. You have fat-soluble vitamins and you have water-soluble vitamins. As a rule, and just as a rule of thumb, there is an exception. As a rule, you can overdose on fat-soluble vitamins because they're stored in your body. They're stored in the fat of your body. They're stored in your liver. You can overdose on fat-soluble vitamins. You need to have fat in your diet to absorb fat-soluble vitamins. A fat-free diet is not good for you because you won't absorb the fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, E, and K are your fat-soluble vitamins. These are your fat-soluble vitamins. A is needed for vision, all transretinal, cisretinal, all transretinal. D is needed for calcium absorption. E is needed for membrane function, and it's also an antioxidant. K is needed for blood clotting. So A, vision. D, calcium homeostasis. E, it is normal membrane function and an antioxidant. And K, blood clotting. Okay, those are your fat-soluble vitamins. And then you have your water-soluble vitamins, which is your B complex. And we say it's the B complex because there's tons of B vitamins. And C. C is called ascorbic acid. Okay, that's what it is. Your B's are involved in metabolism. They are coenzymes in glycolysis, Krebs cycle, and electron transport chain. For example, thiamine is needed in the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex, converting pyruvate to acetyl-CoA. You need thiamine for that. Riboflavin is the precursor for flavin mononucleotide and FADH2. Riboflavin is the precursor of that. Niacin is the precursor for NADH. Pantothenic acid is found in acetyl-CoA. It's a moiety of acetyl-CoA. Pyridoxine is found in aminotransferases. Other places too, but that's one place. Folic acid. This is found, I never had talked about this yet. It's found in methyl transfers. There's a whole bunch of methyl transfer reactions we haven't talked about too much. It's linked to vitamin B12 because vitamin B12 is used in methyl transfers. They have a lot to do with amino acids and nucleic acid. Now, these are very important. Folic acid and B12 are very important in your bone marrow because your bone marrow is making cells constantly, blood cells. So they're always going through mitosis, and you have nucleic acid synthesis. So you need these in your bone marrow a lot. Plus, fetuses need them a lot because a fetus is growing and doing a lot of DNA replication, nucleic acids biosynthesis. So usually prenatal vitamins contain plenty of folic acid and cobalamin and B12. All right, biotin is found in gluconeogenesis, by the way. Other places too. This is not a complete. This is by no means a complete list. And ascorbic acid is necessary for one very important thing: making collagen. What happens is collagen has a couple special amino acids. It's called, boy, I hope I get this right. It's called, well, there's two enzymes, proline and lysine hydroxylase. So what happens is after you make a protein that has proline in it or lysine in it, after you make collagen, which has proline or lysine in it, you modify some of those amino acids in that protein by hydroxylating them, and it allows them to cross-link. So collagen has a lot of proline and lysine hydroxylase, hydroxy groups. Collagen has a lot of cross-linking in it because proline and lysine is hydroxylated by the hydroxylase enzyme. Well, the deal is this. The deal is that vitamin C is necessary to keep this in the correct reduced state. And if you don't have vitamin C, then your proline and lysine hydroxylase doesn't act correctly and your collagen is weak. And if your collagen is weak, then your basement membrane is screwed up a little bit. And what you get is a disease called scurvy. And you get scurvy from this vitamin C deficiency. All right, so that's vitamin C in one of your water-soluble vitamins. All right, let's talk about metabolic rate. Well, we have the basal metabolic rate. And when you talk about how many calories you burn a day, you're really talking about your basal metabolic rate. No, you're not. You're talking on average how much you burn a day. But you have a basal metabolic rate, which would be how many calories you burn an hour at rest, like sleeping or sitting quietly. Of course, if you go out and split some wood, your metabolism goes way up and all that. But we have these metabolic rates. The thing I want to talk about is this: the calorie. In America, our nutritional calorie with a capital C is really a kilocalorie. It's really a scientific kilocalorie. All right. So when you say you have a 2,000 calorie diet with a capital C, that's really 2 million scientific calories. Small c calories. That's really what it is. Because it's really 2,000 kilocalories, which is 2 million little calories. So for some reason in nutrition in America, and I keep saying America because when I went to England recently, I was looking at some of their nutritional labels. They give a true calorie, and they also give a joule. They give calories and joules. Joules is another unit of measurement for energy. So they give you the truth. But over here in America, when we say, your one bowl of cereal has 110 calories, it's really 110 kilocalories. We use that incorrectly over here. You can see different activities that cause the burning of different number of calories. So you can see that. I don't expect you to memorize that. I just expect you to know the calorie story, though, where the capital C calorie is really a scientific kilocalorie. All right, because we're always generating, no energy transfer is 100% successful. Not one of them. I shouldn't say successful. I take that back. Of course they're successful. No energy transfer is 100% efficient. I take back that word successful, sorry. So whenever you have energy transfer, whenever you're making ATP, for example, when you make 36 ATP, and each ATP is worth 7.3 kilocalories per mole, and you did that math, and this just rounded down to 7. 7 times 6 is 42. 7 times 3 is 21, 25. That's 252 calories. Well, the glucose molecule that led to that 36 ATP is actually worth about 650. If you put that glucose, that mole of glucose in a bomb calorimeter and burn it, you really get 650 calories from it. So what efficiency is this? Well, it's about 25 over 65. Just say 20 over 60. 20 over 60, so it's 1/3. You're about 33. You're almost 40. Let's say you're about 35% efficient. So you see, well, where did the rest of the heat go? Where did the other 65% of the heat go? Or, well, it's where I shouldn't. Boy, I keep screwing up on my words. Where did the rest of the energy go? Where did the other 65% of the energy go? And the answer is it went off as heat. So our bodies are constantly producing heat. We're constantly producing ATP, and we're constantly producing heat. Where does the heat go? Well, some of it evaporates when we sweat. Some of it radiates into the atmosphere. Some of it, and this is actually just, well, it's not the same thing as evaporation because that's assuming you're sweating. Some of the heat's carried away as air moves past your body, and that's called convection. And some of it's transferred directly from your body to another object, and that's called conduction. So when your body touches something cooler than you, heat goes from your body to the cooler object by conduction. So there's 4 methods for getting rid of heat, and it's evaporation, radiation, convection, and conduction. All right, that's heat transfer. Now, to maximize some of this heat transfer or to minimize some of this heat transfer, we control how much blood goes to the surface of our body. If we're really, really hot, we open the blood vessels on the surface of our skin. We open those. More blood goes to the surface of our skin, and the heat goes out into the atmosphere by either evaporation or convection. You're not really touching anything, so it's not conduction. So we open the blood vessels in the surface of our skin and we get rid of the heat. It could be radiation or convection or evaporation. If you're sweating, it's evaporation. However, if you're cold, we shut down the blood vessels to the surface of our skin. We don't allow the blood flow to the surface of our skin, and we conserve our heat in the center of our body, in the middle of our body, like in the middle of your arm or in the center of your trunk. So we shunt the blood away from the surface so we don't lose that heat. And one last thing occurs. Now look at this. This is called the countercurrent heat exchanger. As warm blood from the trunk goes towards the surface of my body. All right. So warm blood from my trunk is going towards the surface of my body, and the room temperature near the surface of my body is 24 degrees Celsius, but my trunk is 37. What happens is the venous blood that's returning to my core is now cool. It's cool because it's been at the surface. But I don't want to return this cool blood to my trunk and cool down my trunk. I'll get hypothermia. No problem. As this vein runs next to this artery, the warm artery from my trunk gives heat to the venous blood returning to my trunk. So it heats it up. So I give this heat over, so as the blood returns to my trunk, it's warmed up by that point. And this is called the countercurrent heat exchanger. All right. Okay, thermogenesis. We have two types of thermogenesis. We have shivering thermogenesis. That's your muscle tone increasing, and you actually can shiver and generate heat. And we have non-shivering thermogenesis. Babies do non-shivering very young babies do non-shivering thermogenesis because they can't shiver. And we've already talked about this. You've seen this picture before. Non-shivering thermogenesis occurs in brown fat. That's fat that has a lot of mitochondria. We make this uncoupling protein called thermogenin. And what it does is it uncouples oxidative phosphorylation. So instead of making ATP, you make heat. And I told you when I talked about this picture before that bears that hibernate also go through this non-shivering thermogenesis all winter long so they can generate heat. But we do have this non-shivering thermogenesis in our fat cells for producing heat. And it has to do with turning on this gene for thermogenin, which uncouples oxidative phosphorylation in the electron transport chain. All right, non-shivering thermogenesis. Plus, I have feudal cycles. I have feudal cycles in my body. And what the feudal cycles are is, look at this. If I were to take a glucose and break it down into pyruvate, I would make a couple ATP. I actually make 4 total, but remember I had to use 2. So I had to use 2 and I made 4, so let's just say I make a couple ATP. Or if I take pyruvate and convert it into glucose, I utilize the ATP. I utilize it. This would be there. And you can see that. So really what I'm doing is doing this. And it's just a cycle. It's just a cycle of breaking down ATP into ADP plus phosphate and then remaking the ATP with an organic phosphate. It's just a vicious cycle. It's called a feudal cycle because it goes forward and goes backwards, and it's not really doing anything. But it gives off heat. It certainly gives off heat. So this is non-shivering thermogenesis, these feudal cycles. And that's it.